constitution is in check. The same people who control the school system control the prison system and the whole social system ever since slavery. You know what I'm saying? I went to school with some redneck crackers.
Good day, pioneers. We have for you today another invigorating conversation around educational trends and best practices. And today we have a very experienced and seasoned educator, Miss Mia Jackson. And she's going to tell you about where she's taught and how long she's taught and what makes her qualified to have this very important conversation. Mia?
Thank you, Sister Nafare. I am glad to be here, and I'm just getting started. I'm thinking my first year teaching was probably the winter of '92, and I was subbing then, and I was teaching Head Start at a nonprofit agency at that time, and I think I started out with Head Start for about 7 years. So by 2000, I was into charter education and K-5 grade. Where I was working in Baltimore City, we were looping with our students back then. So I jumped in right at first grade, looped up with my group to second grade, taught them second grade, came back down for first grade, did that a couple of years in a row, looping around while I was working on my masters. Once I got my certification in reading, I started coaching, reading coaching, and my first assignment was a charter in Pittsburgh. So I came back home and started working here where I am now. And that charter was quickly wiped off the map by the public school system, the way the state had it set up. The umbrella system was the bigger district and the charter was underneath it. So over years, the school was able to be dissolved because we were basically competing with their numbers. I found that out later in life. So, that was just a great little think tank type of situation. It was nice there. But then I came to Delaware and taught, I believe, under you for some years, even when I was actually reading coach at Warner for some years, and you were doing some behavioral work at that time. So we kind of crossed paths there. And eventually I came back home, and for the last 10, 11 years, I've been back home teaching. When I first came back, I was here for it all. The secondary education for the first time in my whole career, I was doing 6th to 12th grade. Well, that was extremely stressful. So I was like, I'm gonna give it a go at elementary again. So I went from like teaching 11th graders to second grade. It was outstanding, but I had to get in shape. The second graders were racing me up the stairs, and it was a holistic change. I had to shift my whole paradigm at that point, going from high school back to elementary. But I've been planted at 5th grade now for about the last 6 years. This is going to be my 7th year in 5th grade, teaching 5th grade. And yeah, I would say it's been a road, and I've learned a lot.
Yes, and you're skilled. You're skilled from Delaware to Maryland to Pennsylvania. That's 3 different educational systems, and you've taught everything from pre-K to high school. So you know what's going on, and it's important for our young, aspiring educators to hear from educators like you, your philosophies, your strategies, because we need to prepare our youth as best we can. So talk about your philosophy. What brought you to education, and how has your philosophy changed over time?
I think I was one of those kids who knew I wanted to be a teacher even back in maybe 3rd grade or 4th grade or so. It became real for me when we were in high school and I was filling out applications for college, and it was asking, well, what's going to be your major? And I'm like, oh, well, elementary ed. I just knew that was what I wanted to do. But I did not expect to stay there for a lifetime. I don't know how I thought that was going to pan out, but I have enjoyed my journey, and I'm glad I selected education. Although now what's going on now makes me realize that my job is really for the public. Being in public education, like I feel like I'm just coming to that idea, like, wow, we are here to serve the public, and that is a really big factor that I think people should take on when they go into the classroom. We have to realize that we really don't get to pick who we get. We don't get to pick what we have to do, work with what we have, let me say it like that. And so the population always, to me, has determined how to move forward. And when I think about my philosophy, I walked in the classroom back in '93 and I was thinking, everybody can learn. And that probably is true. I mean, over my years, I've proven that. But you know what? I would say that now I would say love is first. Everyone can learn, but love is first. And I feel strongly about that. Like, I don't feel like anyone could start to do this job without love first. You probably could, but it's going to be tough. If we all could just realize that everything's better with love. Like, you know how they say everything's better with butter. Everything's better with love.
Sugar.
Sugar. I mean, eventually it becomes a relationship. And I've learned that over the years, our students, our scholars, even our parents, our families, we're big on relationship. So we have to start there. And that is my philosophy. I walked in 25, 27 years ago thinking everyone can learn. And that is true. But everyone can learn when love is first. And that's what I've evolved to. And I feel like learning equals, we must have that love and we must have relationship before we can talk about learning. That has to happen. And those are my discoveries over 27 years of teaching.
I love it. And I wanted to just ask you to stay up to the mic because you tend to go out just a little bit.
Okay, I'm not sure where my mic
Yes.
is.
And what you say is so prevalent, and I agree. I remember coming in and wanting to plant seeds, but like you said, seeds need nurturing, and that nurturing is love. And you mentioned something about special education, and I remember specifically wanting to teach general education. And there's this shift that even before we came into education, it's like coming from the one-room schoolhouse and how now we have this individualized instruction. And I remember having some resistance in myself. And this is me peeling back a layer. I like to keep it really honest, even when it's difficult to be honest. But I did have that resistance inside of me, like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't want to teach special education. I knew I wanted to teach general ed, but now it feels like we're all having to know all of the different skill sets. So, what are your thoughts around that? I mean, I know you say love is at the base, but when we're looking at how we went from the one-room schoolhouse to now all these individual plans that all of us as educators seem to be responsible for, what are your thoughts concerning that and where we're headed as educators?
Everyone is different. We tend to, in my career, I've seen educators want to put a one-size-fits-all with this thing, and I hear you saying the term individualized learning plan, and I'm listening, thinking about how this works in my class. So I just want to say, I believe that being in the classroom, you have to have a certain mindset, right? Depending on who you're dealing with. That's always the case. It depends on who you're dealing with. That's one. Two, I believe that when we don't have choice, okay, not everyone is fit for the traditional classroom. Everyone's not going to be successful there. So I have always felt obligated that we as educators should have innovative schools. We should have choice. So lack of choice for us as a people has become misplacement. And misplacement has become label. Oh, he doesn't do well here. This is ODD. Oh, he doesn't do well here. You understand what I'm saying? So we have been labeled, and in my opinion, it's because we're in the wrong placements. Okay, so I could look. I've looked. I think I wrote this down. 1992. Coming into the classroom just right after, and the reason why I use that year, because that's the year I graduated from undergrad. Walking away from my educational experience as an educator, I did not have a clue about how this special ed thing would work. But then when I looked at how 2000, after having been in that classroom for 7-8 years, I felt some of our students could benefit from the medication, and I believe, or even the supports. And I believe there were times in my career I actually advocated for that. Going forward, looking at it now, I probably would not advocate for medication just from my experiences, and realizing that if we had the right placement for these students, then their behaviors could be changed. And like I said, everyone can learn. These labels, I don't know if they would be necessary to get them to the right placement, but I believe that the supports are not they're not equitable. And so therefore our students in groves are coming to special ed because we're not understood. And that breaks my heart because there are no innovative schools. I've worked in one place out of the 3 states where I worked. There was one state who had an initiative called Innovative School Initiative. That was the state of Maryland. And I'm constantly looking for that around here. Let's find those schools that will be non-traditional, that will allow a student who doesn't do well in a traditional classroom to school. Let's find those those various different types of work for our students. So yeah, that's a big deal. That our students have been overly labeled because we're misunderstood and we're in the wrong places. I speak for my own son. If I could have known back then what I know now, I wouldn't have put him in the high school I put him in. It just wasn't for him. Okay, he should have been in a school that was for entrepreneurs. He was in a regular public school setting. I mean, he didn't do badly. His GPA wasn't bad, but it wasn't enough to propel him, to motivate him. And I'm sorry for that. I feel like his placement was everything at that time. And because he missed that, now he still craves that. And he's a young adult now. So moving forward in my mind, I'm glad I got to this part. I feel like that's another big piece of it, is that now we have to provide services for students post high school before they're ready for college. That's how deep innovative schools needs to become, because nowadays when students get to 12th grade, they're simply not ready for the world. They're not. So we as educators, I feel we need to prepare them better. And when they get to 12th, if there is a certain standard that in our minds they haven't met, then we need more placement for them so they can go to that next kind of like a pre-post, it's after high school, but it is to propel you to want to, for this lifetime of learning, because in some cases by 12th grade, kids are turned off from school and they don't want to go. They don't want to further it. And that's a problem for us because it trickles right into our income and our inability or our ability to take care of our families. And so, yes, I think that innovative schools I think that's where we have to go with our kids, or we're going to be running to special ed in groves, hundreds, thousands of kids being labeled and receiving these IEPs that are way beneath the standard. And then they get all the way to high school and you get a piece of paper that says you participated, but it doesn't equal the diploma that all your peers have received. And I'm afraid of that for our kids. How is that student going to provide for their families when it's time for them to take care of themselves?
Yes.
So there's a gap there for me, and that's hard. That's the hard part. What happens with special ed students after education,
Yes, and I think even with the innovative schools, we have to be really careful that we're not measuring in the same ways, because a lot of these classifications are all due to measurements that are flawed. So if the measure is flawed, then that's how we're creating so many classifications that miss where children really are. And it's not that there are any issues with children's aptitude, it's what we are measuring that is an issue in my mind. But
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about where kids go. Okay, think about the tree of being, climbing that tree of being a special needs student. Where does that take you? I feel like it should still level you out. You should not just constantly stay under the radar or under the standard. There's a problem there, and I don't think it's happening everywhere. I think in some districts, students who receive special ed services eventually get what they need and get out of special ed services. I am seeing special ed services become a school career for families, and sometimes that might be necessary. It might be if your kid needs that support all the way through. I know students that who are like that, but then again, I know students who are just below that, you know, and eventually they accommodate for that in their lives, and sometime at some point they should get out of needing that IEP and move into
yeah,
regular education so that they can get what they need to. I don't know how else to put that, but it's interesting to me.
right. So when we think of special education, that's more specifically about academics, but then we have this other whole set of challenges with children in the areas of ADD, ADHD, ODD. Um, and that was, I think, 10 years ago, we saw that become a rise, but now an even bigger rise has become trauma in the lives of children, and how it plays out similarly to ODD and ADHD. They all are under an umbrella, but it can look the same way when a child throws a chair in the middle of your lesson.
Yes, thank you. I would agree. I mean, the way I was looking at it is
Your volume, Mia, your volume.
oh, so I think the way I was looking at it is when our students are, yes, I think I was kind of thinking simultaneously about behaviors and cognitive delays. And so, yes, that's why I said if your child needs it, they need it. If there are some mental things going on there and that stop them or that make them have delayed learning abilities, that's one thing. And I feel that those students should get those services. But our students about having them in special ed settings when they really do have the cognitive ability to be in a regular classroom, about having them receiving services that that take them beneath the standard where they're expected to be by their age, about them being able to throw a chair during the lesson and having a different consequence than a student who is in a regular setting, right? About suspension. And you know, I feel like when we start getting into this, there are things we put like band-aids in education, you know, and then there were people who pushed back on those things. You know, when I think of special ed, and I think of a classroom like mine, because I'm a general educator who has 40% special ed students in my class, okay, and I know that that's not supposed to be the case, but I get another teacher who comes in and supports those students, so that's how it's justified. But we know that those hours don't equal the same when you have one educator over, you have 27 in a classroom and 13 of them are special ed. One educator comes in to service those special ed, those 13, and they each get counted for their hour because she's there for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, they didn't get an hour of service, but I get it. Okay. I'm just saying this is what happens. And therefore, I don't know if if inner city schools, I don't know if this is the split, inner city schools to urban to rural schools. I don't know if that's the split. I don't know if it's black to white. I don't know if it's poor to rich. I don't know what it is. But in some situations, when kids are getting put into these special ed labels, they never get out. And in other situations, the kids get into those special ed labels. They need them, they get their services, and they move on. And they don't have that lifetime stigma. So it worries me that a disproportionate amount of African American students or a disproportionate amount of impoverished students in America could be being labeled and held back in a system that's measuring them, and they won't have a shot at the end of the journey. That worries me.
Yes. And again, you know, this is an unprecedented time in life and in education. And I feel like it's so important that we now start taking these concepts and building on them, because someone decided the one-room schoolhouse wasn't efficient for children anymore. And I feel like we're at a place where we can create and decide this system isn't efficient anymore. And these are the ideas and the concepts and the strategies that need to push forward while we put these other ones to the side. I just want to point out one of my favorite quotes is by Steve Jobs, and he said, "Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact. Everything around you that you call life was made by someone who is no smarter than you." And so, like, we're in this system now, and we inherited it, we adopted it, but it was created by people who were no smarter than us, you know. So young people, go out here and create the next system based on what we are sharing with you now. So what strategies do you find most effective in combating undesirable student behaviors? You talked about relationships earlier.
Thought about, okay, I go frequently to my first year of teaching, and then I drop to the 2000 year, which is like right when I entered into elementary K-12 education. Up until that point in public education.
Your volume is going in and out.
Where my mic is, but does this work a little better when I'm facing this way?
Yes.
All right, I'll back up. First year I entered education in '92 because I was finishing my undergraduate degree at that time. Then I like to look at my experience in 2000 because I was just entering the public sector of education, K-12. And then I like to look at where I am now. And that resources. That's how I was looking at it. Routines, consistency, and resources. I thought that would be fine. I think in the 2000s, I started working on my master's, and I was in public education, and things were a little bit different. I started looking at I need data to review, and then I need action. So that kind of changed there. My paradigm kind of shifted. In 2020, I feel like I cannot start until I make my students love I have for them simply for who they are. Then we start with relationship. I have to start there. I've learned that. As soon as I can show them I'm willing to have a relationship with you, I'm willing to have a relationship with you. Our kids, for the students who I'm in front of every day, if I could just start there, they will open up for me and they will do for me. And I need people to understand that we work that way. Our people work that way. I need to know you love me. Not that you love what I'm about, that you love me, right? So we have to, that relationship, that's where I am right now in my teaching. I have to think of that, which scares me with remote learning, okay? Because there's something here that blocks me from being able to impact you. I don't know how to do that this way. It's new for me. Let me just put it that way. I don't think it's impossible, okay? Because I think that my ability to build a relationship has not changed. That can still be the same. I just feel like this is a barrier, or could be. It'll just be a little harder, but I think we all have to.
The sound went out again.
I don't know where it is on my, I know my camera's up here, but I'm not sure where mine.
Yeah.
Let's see. But I just wanted to tell this quick story about relationship.
Okay.
I don't live. I work where I used to live when I was growing up as a child. That's where I work. Okay. So I'm riding through my old neighborhood, which is a very tough area. Okay. And this summer, since COVID, some of the kids' parents have given them coolers, mostly boys you will find doing this throughout the neighborhood. And they have large rolling coolers filled with ice water, and they're at the corners and they're selling them.
Mm-hmm.
So my fiance and I, we make a joke about this, because if I have any money around me, if I see kids and they're from my class, I'm going to give it to them. And I don't really want the water, because I like core water. They have, they're trying to make a profit. I don't want that. But if I know them, I'll stop. I'll give them whatever I, have, and I'll just keep going. Well, yesterday I ran into 3 little boys, and they were from my 5th grade class about 3 years ago. So they're in 8th grade. And they couldn't believe, they saw me first. Actually, I was going to try to just keep going, because I didn't want to really dig in my bag and stop. And, I was in traffic. I was trying to go, but they were like, hey, we know her. That's Miss Jackson. So they flagged me down. They came into the car, and the one kid must have said 10 times, I know you miss me. I know you miss me. I know you miss me, Miss Jackson. And I wouldn't respond. I don't know why. I was just like, well, how's your mom? How's your sister? I was asking questions, but he wanted me to say, Cameron, I missed you, and he said, he wanted me to say that. He said, he kept saying it. He must have said it about 10 times. My point is, we were standing there just chopping it up. We acted like we were family. I was in my car. They stood to the passenger side of my window. Cars pulled up behind me. I said, flag them, tell them go ahead. They were telling them, go, making the cars go around. But there was a car who pulled up who they must have wanted water. Okay. So I hurried up and gave them the money, and I pulled off. And the one of the kids said, I hope we see her every Thursday. And I was like, I only left him $3. My fiance is like, would you give him $25 or something crazy? And I was like, no, it was just a couple of singles. But they were grateful. They hadn't seen me. I hadn't seen them. And it was heartbreaking to see them out there. And yeah, it just, relationships, everything. I mean, that was a good one.
Yes. I think that's definitely the reward of being an educator, is stories like that.
Or anywhere out in the city or in the community, and you see kids who you work with. When I taught high school, they would try to act like they didn't know me. So you see 2nd graders, they will run you down in the grocery store. Families apologizing. But the kid is like, that's my teacher. It's just the coolest thing. The smaller kids, I love it.
Yes, yes. That's what I love about them too.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of student growth, what do you think are the most important aspects? Because we're charged to do way more than is ever really possible in a day's work, but nevertheless, it's all there for us, to do. But it, in terms of trying to narrow it down, what's most important?
Well, one thing that stood out for me with this question is the action of goal setting. And so for growth, to me, in any area of my own personal life, I have to narrow it down, set a goal, and take it one step at a time. And when, to me, in our school, we call that growth mindset.
Yes.
And so when you have your children start with a growth mindset, to me, that's the most effective tool I can give them as a fifth grader, because they need to know, even if it was a small personal goal, a small personal desire, that you can write it as a goal statement and you can manifest it, right? Through
Yeah.
action. And so I believe that having the growth mindset is one of the best tools I can give my fifth graders right now. That's something that, yeah, I believe that wholeheartedly. And that to me is not just in academics, that's in any area of my life that I want to improve. I have to look at it and realize where I am and where I want to go, set a goal, and take baby steps and get there. And I think that the growth mindset is probably the best thing I could give to them.
Yeah, agreed. That's so empowering because like you said, that's something you will use throughout the rest of your life.
Period.
And it kind of really leads right into my next question, which is about standardized testing and the relevance and or effectiveness of it. I think I've been pretty clear on where I stand, and I'll say I can't tell you what I scored on any one of my standardized tests in my lifetime. Probably SATs, I do remember my score, but it was pretty low. And I still went on to earn my doctorate, right? So, but that growth mindset has taken me way further than any score on any standardized test. Your thoughts?
How were the standardized tests being used? When I was a kid, I just remember taking the test and my teacher would talk to me about how I measured up against all the other kids in the world, in the nation. I think we were taking CAT tests back then, okay?
CAT, yep.
I was faring too badly with testing. I don't think it was a bad thing. As a child, it didn't impact me negatively. Let me put it that way.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Education, it switched, and these test scores became me as the teacher. This is my problem now, or it could be my victory, which I don't know if that's fair. So used to me makes them irrelevant. If you're going to look at this data to tell me how good I am as a teacher, I think we've missed the boat. But if you're going to look at this data to inform families on things that they could do to enhance their child's learning experience, then I feel that we're winning. So I think that the purpose and the reason that people are using standardized tests determines if it's relevant or not. If we're looking at it and using it as a tool to measure and evaluate a teacher, I just think it's irrelevant at that point. You could let me take the test and then you can tell me about my evaluation, right? But I don't know if I think that's disconnected. But when I have taken scores, or any kind of score for that matter, and shared it with my students, the families, and let them know what I think, recommend things for them, feedback, power. The power is right there in the feedback. Okay. And to me, that is the part that makes it relevant.
But what you say there is critical, and it's definitely helped shape my mindset as well, my growth mindset. And I thank you for that. But what I see is kids getting caught up. What'd you get? A 1, 2, 3, or 4. And if you're a 4, you're really smart. And if you're a 1, you're really not smart. And they don't care about the feedback. They want the rating. And that's what I feel like in a lot of ways as a society we've gotten to, is just wanting to be rated and wanting to know who's above you, who's beneath you, and where you fit within that system. A class system.
That is a step up from what I'm seeing. When kids don't get the feedback, they don't even know about the rating. That's silly to them. They don't care about a 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you get what I'm saying? When they don't get the feedback is not something that they crave. They're not even looking at the score. Okay, they don't care. That test,
you've trained them that way. That speaks to you as an educator.
Well, I think that we overhaul it in public education. As soon as I start to talk to my kids about the test, they get turned off. I could teach them those same concepts and never mention the test, and we would have a ball and learning would take place without resistance. But I think that some kids get so stressed out about tests that they just cope that way by not, they go through and they won't even try because their experience is so negative with it that you're not getting a real snapshot of what they really can do. And I think that if a kid did care about their rating, at least they were willing to put enough effort to try to get the rating that they want. But when you're working with kids who don't have intrinsic motivation, they don't care about that rating. They're caring about making it through that test session. What can I do to make it through without snapping? What can I do to make it through and without crying or melting down? Do you see what I'm saying? So again, that could be traumas too. But getting back to what you were saying about the relevance of the test and that feedback is everything, Doc. I mean, the kids want it. I've never known kids who say, what did I get? But they don't want to know what they did wrong. But that's, again, like you said, a reflection of me, because when I give you your score, I'm going to tell you what you have to do to get more. That's always. So you're fiending for that when you come to me to have that conference, And that is something that changes in children over the 5th grade year. They'll come in and not care, but you don't know what you don't know when you act that way. Once they experience me, now they know, raise my score. If I want more, then I'm listening, I'm taking notes, and I'm going to do that. So there's that growth mindset. It has to be in everything we do. These kids motivated. I don't know another way. External, it's not working. External motivation, no. I have to my feedback, once again, feeds back to my relationship with those students, because they care about what I say, because they know I love them.
There it is. Right at the base, right at the root. It's always going to come back to that. I think that we are getting right.
Yeah.
But what do you believe is most needed in education today? We see millions of dollars, we see lots of resources, but then we still see these gaps.
I would say equity. I feel like Obama was fighting for that when he pulled up with Common Core. I feel like he thought, if you're going to be a kindergarten student in Chicago, Texas, Florida, anywhere in America, you need to be doing kindergarten things, meeting kindergarten standards, right? I think he was thinking that equity when he came up with Common Core. I noticed the rigor jump. That how things got a little tougher for kids. I noticed that in my district, that when we were focusing on Common Core, the instruction got more rigorous. And I like it. I like that part about it. But I just feel like the rollout is sensitive. It was never really rolled out to us as educators. It was just kind of handed to us. This is Common Core. Yesterday it was No Child Left Behind, but this is Common Core today,
Race and Stop was after that one. Yep.
We missed the boat when we didn't educate our parents on the switch. You know, that parent education, I don't know if we need to coin it, term it, but there needs to be a session or something. I don't know if it should change by the school, by the district, by the grade. I don't know, but parents need to be educated, especially if they don't have children who have walked through these grades already. You know, this is my first child. I'm here as a kindergarten with my child in kindergarten. That parent needs education. Number one, they just need to know what we expect as a school. There is no way that your child would come through a school from kindergarten all the way up to 5th grade, and in 5th grade, you are still having problems with behaviors and things. The culture of the school, your child still hasn't embraced it. There's something wrong. There's a disconnect, and I believe it's because the parents are not educated, because if parents know, they tell you, right? And then you know, this is important to my mom, this is important to my dad or my guardian. You know that because they're telling you. But if they're not reinforcing what I'm saying, we're not on the same page. So that's what's missing. Well, and it's not missing everywhere, because some teachers do realize this. And so they start out building these relationships. But where you have educators and that's not their focus, they don't realize that walking in. That's a tough year. A lot of complaints. Parents are not happy. They don't understand what you expect. You have to build a relationship, and part of it is that they have to trust that you're doing your best to do what their kids. What was my school doing to help me provide that for my parents? I think we're getting there now with COVID. We're realizing we have several platforms to reach people. It can't just be one platform, school or whatever it's called. It can't just be that one thing. It has to be, oh, this is for the parents who work nights. This is for the parents. We're doing everything we can to provide with some build a relationship in our school and to be educated about our housing and expectations. And that's how your child be successful in school. And that's kind of where I went with that. I just feel like, really parent education on every level. Parents should be getting diplomas when I should be getting my diploma too when I take that. We did it. You know what I mean? We built a relationship here. I even thought years ago about can I get my parents points for the various events that I'm going to sponsor this year as a one to support it? Can I at the end of the year say, hey, here's a gift card, did 20 out of 30 events with us this year. You know, 20 out of 30 is what. That means that you're a star. You know, like I want to rate them because their participation means that much to me. And I thought about it, but it wasn't something that I was able to manifest. Well, I wouldn't mind trying to come up with a system to motivate parents to be more educated and well versed about the schools their children go to. Some people are. Other people have no clue. And to me,
Yeah, and I think, you know, we know that society, the way society is set up, a lot of our parents are working 2, 3 jobs, and they just aren't in a position to participate as much as they'd like. And then we have others who feel intimidated by the system, feel broken by the system, and are doing the bare minimum based on those feelings and several other scenarios. But do you think that there is a policy? Because I know even with this racism work and how to be an anti-racist and diversity work and equity work, some of what is being talked about is changing policies is the ultimate way to eradicate the ills of our society. It's in policy. So is there a policy that you think should be in place concerning education that would strengthen education as a whole?
all of the educators I know, when I taught in the state of Delaware, if you were a certified teacher in the summer, you were permitted to take 6 credits, 6 graduate credits, I believe. That's how it worked, for free every summer.
Mm-hmm.
Reason because of that policy, my time teaching in Delaware, I feel was most effective, most powerful for me as a professional. I currently work in a place where there's always, don't get it wrong, there's always educator training everywhere. But in the district, it's not like they allow you to pick what you want. They tell you where you have to go.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
With that policy that I knew about when I taught in Delaware, I could go to any whatever they hit on their list, and I could learn that to bring into my practice. I think that was the most powerful thing. Do they still do that in Delaware?
I don't think so. That funding dried up years ago.
I think we keep coming back. I think it could benefit us all. It would benefit the kids. It would benefit the individual teacher. It would benefit the district where they work. I think it changed the game. It makes the teacher press to do better every year.
Wow.
I know it did that for me. That policy needs to come back across the country, period. Innovative school choice. I step on that. I would love, my son went to Prestige for a year when he was in 5th grade. It was an all-boy urban academy college preparatory.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot. That was excellent. Very, very small choice. Very, very limited. Okay. One thing that does well for impoverished kids. We need creativity. We need some diversity. We have to get exposed. If you are normally in some sort of academic way, it's possible that you could need years with arts, culinary. Show them how to take their talents to the next level so they can make a living in life, and that's missing in the traditional school. I have to teach standards,
Yes,
so
yes.
that's what we're going to be. Public education standards, if they were still here, and I feel children who can't make it in a traditional setting. And that's stand on that because of my experience. I've seen students who it's like, what did they have? Whatever it was, that worked for them. And that's the point I'm making. Provide our parents with choice. That's a big deal because it almost is like anti-public.
Yeah, I think that's super, super important. I have come to that same conclusion myself and would love to see more of that moving forward. As we talk educational reform and the future of education, let's talk
Absolutely.
choice. Let's talk choice. What a beautiful
Absolutely.
way to end this interview. Last question for you. Some of the educational resources that have strengthened you the most, and you can also speak to individuals, perhaps professors or teachers who you feel are super strong and their teachings need to go on.
The craziest thing happened last year this time. We all reported back to school for 2019 school year, and my principal wanted us to take a 3-day retreat. And, it wasn't mandatory, but Most of us signed up for it because, like I said, we're always interested in learning something, right? That we think we can take into our classroom. So sure, I'll come in for 3 days and learn. He took us to a conference called the Black State of Learning. The keynote speaker was Dr. Bettina Love. The name of her book is We Want to Do More Than Survive. And she talks about abolitionist teaching, some of those core terms were not received well in Western Pennsylvania. One of the terms that sticks out to me was she mentioned Black brilliance. That really took people to the side, you know. But I was almost blown away by just the amount of perspective that she had coming from Buffalo, being a student, you know, and then trying to play in urban education. One of the things she talked about is how publishers are creating curriculum that's dumbing down our children. You know, so you gotta check the team. She is, woo, gotta go read that, okay, sis?
Tell me the name of it again.
We Want to Do More Than Survive by Dr. Bettina Love. It was impacting. I mean, for my school year, I just remember coming into last school year, and I was like, you know, she basically stood here and told us that the system we're working is the same system that it's in bondage. You know, it was deep for me because I internalized this. Like I said, I want to take something into my classroom and try to, you know. So yeah, there were a lot of takeaways there, and I say for me, Black brilliance was one of the big ones walking away. You know, I had to embrace it because 99% of my students are Black and brown children. You know,
Wow.
her commentary was relevant. I feel that anyone who's going into a classroom with children anywhere, that you need to hear what she's saying. It was deep, especially for white teachers who are going into 90. I'm 50, and some of my colleagues will say, "I don't remember my teachers, but I remember Miss Cookie from pre-K. She taught me how to do my, you know, you got to do what you're told." And one of my big things in pre-K is I'm not taking a nap. And Miss Cookie showed me through just a basic napping routine. Oh, you're gonna take a nap.
I can see kids saying that about me, like that's what they remember. Yes, darling, you are going to do exactly what I said.
You know, so she taught me that all the way back in pre-K, and I never forgot Miss Cookie, you know. And I had a first grade teacher, her name was Miss Ginyard. She introduced me to writing, and I don't know she was my neighbor and she was my teacher, you know, and somehow, somewhere, I started calling her Super. She loved it. And we just built this relationship, and she just taught me, okay, you turn this in, but I want you to do it better. She just taught me perfection, you know, how to push.
Yes.
I don't even know how. I didn't think I was talented back then, but that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That's impacting. Every teacher I'm mentioning had a relationship with me. You know, they knew me better than I knew me. The Jewish area in Pittsburgh. It's called Squirrel Hill. And I would, on Saturdays, I would go into that go there for music lessons on Saturday morning. And it was a school-wide district thing, but you had to be invited. But Mr. Lutz and his wife came to speak with my mom and asked, can Mia come over after the lesson? We want her to come. And my mom let me go, and he started signing me up in the orchestra for my playing. I was 7th grade, and you know, I was in like a quintet with like a bassoon player, a sax. It was just awesome. But Mr. Lutz really introduced me to like symphonic music and reading music that was really deeper than, you know, he took me to that other level with my music. And I think because of him, my level and skill allowed me to go to college on a band scholarship. That was a big deal.
Wow.
You know?
That's so important.
It just propelled into something way bigger, you know? Was the head of the education department at Delaware State University when I was a freshman through senior year in undergrad. But Dr. Paul Woods had a special loving for me. And this is crazy, again, relationship, because he pledged Q at Duquesne and I was from Pittsburgh. So, you know, that commonality just, I can't even say on this recording the great things that Dr. Paul Woods did for me. Believe me, may he rest in peace. He laid it down. He showed me what to do, you know? And
yes.
I ran into him in Delaware because at first I was struggling with passing the praxis when I first got out of college. And Dr. Harper was from Pittsburgh, not just from Pittsburgh, but he was from my neighborhood, right? And he had designed a course to show teachers how to pass the praxis. And somehow I found him through Howard Career Center. And he taught me how to get certified. And I'm sorry, but that was one of the biggest things that he impacted my ability, my earning power, period.
Absolutely. You wouldn't be where you are right now if it weren't for that lesson.
That's all. So yeah. I had to say those names. I couldn't wait to get to this part to tell you about Dr. Woods and Dr. Harper, who those impacts happened after undergrad, but they were planted from undergrad, you know?
Wow.
That was Dr. Woods working and Dr. Harper working in my life after I already graduated from the program. You know, that's what I mean by relationship.
Right, right. And I love the lifelong learning lesson there as well, because we are on this journey. This Zoom right now is about each of us learning from each other, bouncing ideas off, really reflecting upon our practice so that we can go back into the field and be better. So, Ms. Jackson, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your energy. For anyone who would love to reach out to you for speaking engagements and workshops, and we know you are going to be a published author any day. So can you please share with the audience how they can reach out to you for more information?
My email is stacymama@gmail.com. That's SAICYMA@gmail.com. So yes, I can be reached right there. Thank you.
stacymama@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.